Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
Bad down the hatches, Wormine. It's time for some real drama and shit. I'm bald. Wormine!
And now, the conclusion.
Wormine, it's time to crap on this show some more. That I like. Sorry. So some of what I think was happening with the writing is there are certain things that happened within the first 5 seasons that I think gave other showrunners and writers leeway to just say, hey, you know what? Because that happened, that meant this. We can do this with the rules and whatnot. Like, for example, originally you couldn't look at angels. They couldn't show themselves to anybody. Their fucking eyes would melt, and if they didn't explode or whatever, they just couldn't look at angels. They would die. Just fucking say that the first time, idiot. And demons were like black clouds on Earth, so they had to possess people. They could possess anyone, otherwise they were just black clouds that couldn't really do much. And the angels needed human bodies too, because they were also not really corporeal. But that was mostly, like I said, because if they did come down in their true form, it would kind of just obliterate the world. One of them could destroy probably a whole city. And it's implied that they're fucking huge too. But I think that was a later season that implied that. Maybe. All I know is angels really just can't come down to Earth as they are, or bad things happen. So you never see one through seasons 1. In seasons 1 through 5, they try to reach people through like radios and stuff. Sometimes you'll see a light shining if they're possessing a human, but you don't see them. And the original seasons had kind of a it's better to tell and not show as far as special effects are concerned. I'll get into that too. But anyway, so there's one point though where Anna, which I mentioned in the last video, part thing, she used to be an angel. She makes herself a human because she's tired of all the bullshit about the apocalypse and their conflicts. Because God leaves at one point, just I'm assuming just to let things run, just to give everyone freedom, and the angels kind of just eat themselves. So she becomes human. Then at one point they find her grace because she ripped it out to fall to Earth. And she like shatters it. It's in a vial, she shatters it, and this like light cloud thing enters her mouth. And that's season 3 or 4? Yeah, well, that's what angels look like now in other seasons. Because that's what it looked like when Anna got her grace back. It took a long time to get to this point. But that's what it looked like, and that's what they all look like now when they come to Earth to possess people. They're white clouds. White cloud thingies. They basically just look like demons. Like, no, they were kind of just teleporting into people. They weren't these wispy things floating around. They were gargantuan mega power beasts that you couldn't fathom. So they didn't actually come to Earth. They would just sort of warp into people. And then I mentioned earlier, Lucifer had like an alternate vessel, because Sam was supposed to be his main one that he fought Michael with on Earth. Because the battle has to take place on Earth for some reason. The angels can't just like fight whatever. Writing, it is kind of dumb. That was a season 5 thing. So I'm not just a purist, you're a purist. So Lucifer has this alternate vessel. They don't really get too much into him, like how he's related or anything. It's just Lucifer is kind of like circling around him to get him to say yes and taunting him and stuff. And eventually he does, but the vessel's burning out. Now the thing is, the original rule is that angels could only possess people that were part of a certain bloodline. Like, they established this several times. They just don't really get into this alternate vessel being related, but you kind of have to assume he is somehow. Because later Michael is able to possess Sam and Dean's half-brother, who's a lot like Dean, who is a lot like his father, who Michael can also possess. So there's like certain lineages that get followed. So what I think happened was they saw Lucifer take over another body, so now that means any angel can take over anyone that has the ability to hold an angel's grace. Like there is kind of a comical episode where a bunch of angels are tricking people through an evangelical church to like come in and be blessed and possessed by an angel. A lot of them are just blowing up because they can't contain one. But that's not really how it works. It's certain bloodlines. Even Castiel, like, he possesses one other person in the original 5 seasons, and that's the daughter of his vessel. There's a cool moment where everybody's kidnapped. This was when Castiel was ripped out of his vessel to be, like, re-educated to not be human. early on when demons have everybody because they want the vessel to learn about angels, I guess, to help kill angels or something, I forget. And you just kind of see, I think there's like a light or something off in the distance where Castiel's daughter is. No, I don't think that happened at all. But she starts killing demons and stuff, and they're like, what the fuck? That's a little girl killing demons? And it's like, oh yeah, that's Castiel. And that's fucking Jimmy Novak's daughter, so he's able to, he's able to use her as well as Castiel. And he was almost gonna leave with her too, but Jimmy's like, you work for me! But yeah, it's like you give them a little bit of a mountain or a molehill or some shit, and moles do something. And the best one, in season 5, the boys end up in heaven because like some hunters murder them after finding out Sam helped free Lucifer. So they shoot the shit out of them, thinking that'll solve something. They just catch them in their hotel room and kill them. They end up in heaven. They're running from angels, trying to get Dean to say yes to Michael. They run into Joshua, an angel that, the only angel that God actually talks to, because he's like the gardener, so they can relate, since they maintain gardens. And they're like, hey, we have a message for God. And Joshua's like, God's got a message for you. Oh, I forgot the build-up. Lucifer's free. They're trying to find God. They think that's their only chance to win, because they don't want to let Michael and Lucifer fight and kill everything. So back to the message. Joshua's like, yeah, God says back off. And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, he doesn't really want to get involved. It's kind of why he left. Just stop asking. He knows what you're going to say. He knows everything you want to say to him and ask him. And no, he doesn't want you to find him. He never wanted any part of this. So I'm going to resurrect you and let you remember this message this time. Because it's established they've gone to heaven several times after being killed. Because you wonder, like, how do these demons and stuff not kill them throughout the first 4 seasons? And it turns out they do. They just scrub their mind and send them back to Earth because they need them down there to do apocalypse things. And they're like, this time you gotta remember, leave them alone. And that seems to indicate to the writers that future seasons that God's kind of a jerk, and he ends up being the final villain, and disappointingly stays a jerk the whole time. It's not revealed to be a test or anything, he's really just an asshole. Like, in season 5, he does help them. The whole point is, he was letting everybody have free will, even the angels. And he ultimately wanted the humans to not have to deal with the angels and their apocalypse. Because at one point Sam says yes to Lucifer, because their plan is to have him jump into this special cage that he was in to begin with. And he's beating the shit out of Dean, and they're at the Impala, and all of a sudden he's about to hit him with like one final punch and kill him, and Dean's like, no, Sam, I'm still here. Don't worry, I'm still with you. And then all of a sudden a convenient light glare off the Impala catches Sam's eye, well, Lucifer's eye. And he looks down at a toy that Sam had shoved into the car during their many childhood adventures with their dad while he was hunting demons. And this allows Sam to take control and jump into the hole. So God was helping, and that's like one of my favorite moments in the show. Like, they built up to that, and it was obvious, like, God's not actually telling them to do this shit themselves. It was a test. It was like a free will thing. And he still came through and helped them, and then kind of disappears at the end of the show, because he's Chuck! Which, of course, they bring that back. He shows up a couple more times. They did hold off for a while. But, then he's the final villain, and he also fights his evil, dark sister. So yeah, again, my point was just, they seem to take cues from, like, previous seasons and then just go way off the fucking rails with them. That was very long-winded. This is gonna be like 4 parts. Not if I blow through this next thing. Which is problems I have, even though I've been bitching this whole time. I look like Dracula. Sort of. Surprised they didn't use him, they probably did. So some dumb shit that I just made a list of that I have a problem with. Things that kind of offend me the most. Again, Crowley is the king of hell. He takes over. Like, Lucifer is locked up. Crowley's like, I'm actually megalomaniacal. I'm doing this. I'm the king of hell now. Every demon listens to me, and I want power. And it also just magically makes him stronger, which is kind of lame. Like, he was already implied to be strong, then this just gives him even more power. and he gets overused. Until the show has some, like, feud with him and, like, just cuts him out and sends him off. I don't really know what happened. They just don't seem to get along anymore. Even he's like, I don't know, they don't really seem to like me now. I'm sure something happened. Yeah, he made a deal with Bobby to help him. That's not the point. He was apathetic originally. He just was looking out for himself. He wanted to keep living his rich guy life on Earth in this one meat suit. This poor guy taking over that also was in Doctor Who at one point. The actual actor, that's the story I'm going with. And like, he even goes out of his way to actually heal one of their friends. Like, they were making a deal to find a gun they thought could kill Lucifer, because it had killed pretty much everything else up to that point, but they lost track of it. And at this point, the friend, his name's Bobby, who's like a big staple of the series, who also gets brought back and he's in alternate universe and shit, whatever. He was crippled from having to stab himself when a demon was taking him over, which kind of helped Sam realize he could probably fight off Lucifer if Bobby can fight off a demon's possession. Anyway, Crowley at one point is like, they've all come together to deal with like some zombie factory thing along the way to find this gun. I forget how that all tied together, but he's like, "You just gonna sit there, Bobby?" Bobby's like, "The fuck you mean? I'm in a wheelchair." But then his feet start moving and he gets up and he's like, "Thanks." Because you find out Crowley, the deal was, he's going to take Bobby's soul, use it to help locate the gun, because, you know, they use their souls for magic when they make deals with demons. And he used that to find the cult they needed. And then he also snuck in a little clause where he heals Bobby, just to help, because, I mean, I'm sure he thought, hey, that probably would need his help. But he was just being nice. And then they go back on that. He's like, no, he kept his soul, because he said he was going to give it back. He's like, hey, I'm going to give it back. We just got to make this deal so I can use your soul, find the gun, and also heal you. But that's a surprise for later. Anyway, so like season 7 or 8 or something, Bobby's actually in hell because he dies. And they just find out Crowley's an asshole who kept his soul. They like just turning good characters into jerks. Yeah, I'm really not blowing through this section. Yeah, angels are overused. Like I said, their mystique is just completely ruined because they're there all the time. They really like grind home that they're robots and are emotionless. It's just like with demons being overused, their mystique is just gone. Like seasons 4 and 5 honestly used them as much as they needed to be used for the show. And after that, it's like, just don't bring them back. Do it very sparingly. No, they're back all the time. They become major staples that are just there a lot. And they make Castiel a member of the main cast, which he's my favorite character and all. I like the actor and the character, but just keep him like once every year or something. If you have to, like I said before, angels just don't need specific vessels. They can take over anybody. It ruins the handicap. The thing is, they were always more powerful than demons. Like most angels could take 90% of the demons out there. But the demons could possess anybody, and the angels could only come to Earth and fight the demons without destroying everything if they had a vessel that they were like preordained and destined to be able to take over. So the angels couldn't just pop in and be like, I'm gonna fight you. They had to like actually have a link to their one specific, or at least specific bloodline of hosts. So that was a cool little trade-off. But that's ruined because they can just take over anybody that can hold them now. They can just pop down to Earth and blow people up until they find somebody that doesn't blow up. It's dumb. And like I said, angels have a physical life form now in later seasons. And it just looks like demons. Just palette swap demons, less cloudy, more wispy. One thing that was kind of cool, but also kind of dumb, is monsters, like vampires and stuff, all have like a head version called alphas, who all come from like a mother monster thing from Purgatory that made them all. I just thought that was dumb because it's just adding structure that didn't need to be there. I mean, there's not an alpha human, but I guess the monsters didn't come from God was the point. Eve was where they came from. I don't know. They didn't need that structure. They didn't need to be a king of like each monster. Jack. He's just on the list. Just Jack. I mean, come on. They already had Nephilim, which was like half human, half angel. They run into them. Like, they have to kill one as part of, like, a seal or something. There were seals that were holding Lucifer, and I think killing a Nephilim was would break one of the seals, and they end up having to at one point. And then I think there are other Nephilim later in the series. And then they make Jack, because, like, what if Lucifer had a baby with a human? He hates humans, by the way. He would never fucking do it. But I guess he did it somehow. I don't need the specifics, I don't care. And he ends up becoming, like, the fucking, what is it called? Deus Ex or whatever. Whenever you have, like, a really powerful villain and it takes, like, a specific thing to beat them, that's Jack. Because for some reason he ends up blowing up, and that makes him also a vacuum to, like, intake all power around him, which eventually makes him strong enough to stand up to God, which then lets him absorb God's powers. And oh yeah, they fight God. How do you do that? I guess they try to downplay how powerful he actually is, but in the final season, they say, like, Michael says, like, the angels kind of played that up after he left. It's like, lame! Just don't include him in the show. Just don't have the show. Angels fighting, like, is the thing they show, and it's terrible. They shoot laser balls at each other. It's really dumb. Michael and Lucifer kind of end up fighting when Dean gets to control Michael's power. Alternate universe Michael, because there's a couple of those around. With the agreement that, you know, Dean gets control, because they need him to go fight Lucifer, who's siphoning power off from Jack. There's a big dumb fight they have. They end up, like, swinging around on wires in the ceiling, from the ceiling of a church. It's supposed to look like they're flying, and then fucking Sam throws Dean a archangel blade. Somehow Lucifer doesn't see it, and Dean stabs him. It's a whole dumb fight. There's a reason they cut off any battle in season 5. What I mean is Michael and Lucifer are ready to fight, but it never happens because it gets stopped last second. Because it would probably look like shit. I'm sure Eric Kripke knew that it would look like shit if he tried to, like, show a grand battle, so, you know, it never happens. It's talked about a lot. It's built up as, like, a battle that'll destroy the Earth, but it gets averted. But then in this fucking fight, they're in a church and nothing really seemed to be getting burnt or destroyed. They're just throwing laser balls and stuff. It happens in an alternate universe, too. Main universe Lucifer fights the alternate universe Michael. They're throwing lasers. It's supposed to be like atom bombs going off when they fight, I assumed. If it's gonna scorch half the Earth, Death, who's like one of the best characters in the fucking show, gets killed and replaced, and there's a whole bunch of dumb rules about it. Like, the last Reaper that kills Death becomes Death. I don't think anybody liked that fucking rule they made up, like one of the recent seasons. Or no, did I say the last Reaper that dies becomes Death? I don't remember what I said. After Death is killed. But Death is like this primordial being that was there when God was there, and he was like watching him make the universe. He's like, oh, that's cool. Alright, good work. Because like God like creates, and Death is kind of like his counterpart in that he reaps people when they die and stuff. And he was supposed to be the one to reap God eventually, but that ends up being done. Because Jack's the new God. Maybe that's what they meant? I don't know. Other Reapers become Death. It's lame. The guy that played him was cool too. And somehow Dean is able to trick him with his own scythe. Wow, I'm going really long.